Going to have a conversation on the role of validators in the ecosystem and how they can also interact with DAOs. Sebastian, Cryptic, and Michael from Marinade are going to join me on the stage. You want to test if it's on?
Test.
Yes. Allo en microfono. Cryptic, grab a microphone from him.
Good to see you.
Over there. So this is a little bit more of a headier conversation, I think, because we don't really talk about the role of validators in each DAO uniquely. Like, how does Marinade impact Mango, for example? And one of the recurring themes that I've seen from Anatoly has been this desire to see validators in much more of a active role in these DAOs. I think what would be interesting is to learn about where we are today. And we can start with you, Michael. Thinking about Marinade's role in these other DAOs, is this something you guys actively think about today, or is this something on the horizon? Where's your thinking on this?
Right. So I might have maybe the opposite view as Anatoly. Like at Marinade, we really look at not who the validator is, but what their metrics are. That's really what it is. Us at Marinade, we run 0 validators to stay completely objective. So we are a pool that stakes to validators. That's why we don't run a 1 to stay objective. If you look at the whole cluster of stake, I think it's interesting to slice it in like 3 segments. So you have about third stake that's staked on those 100% commission validators. So those are usually the ones that operate just for their own stake. Then you have about third of validators charging exactly 10% commission. And those are usually ones participating in the Solana Foundation delegation program. And then you have the rest, let's call it maybe community-run validators. There are like from 200 to 300 of those. So about 10% of all validators, we can label them as the community validators, which charge between 0 and 9% commission. So that's the basic distinction. And then, how we see it at Marinade, I think what's helpful is that we get to bootstrap a validator, so you don't need to shake hands with Marinade as long as you keep it running at least for 1 month. That's reasonable commission, and that's reasonable performance. You will have stake to bootstrap your validator, which has been really helpful for all those validators, including the DAO-operated validators, the communities, because they get this initial stake from Marinade that helped them from the get-go. And then as they grew, they were able to attract more stake from the others. That's how it's supposed to be. They should not be reliable only on one source of stake. So I think from our perspective, we look at them as more like a commodity, not really as really a community, to tell the truth. But I think it's been helpful, and we like to see them. We like to see them around, and we love at Marinade that we are able to support them.
So I understand that Marinade's not a validator, but a large portion of stake goes through LSTs. So I guess the question is, if there were a responsibility that validators had with DAOs, would that be pushed exclusively at the validator level? Or do you think it's also something that could be abstracted to the LST level? And I'm addressing this question to you, Sebastian.
Yeah, sure. I think that the idea of introducing validators to your DAO, I think is part of the, wider experiment of introducing external governance power to your DAOs, right? So we are talking about different governance structures. There was discussion about the hacks and how we can protect ourselves. And you have like the traditional governments, you have the division of power. you have Senate with 2 different chambers, you have the executive branch, you have the legislative branch, and they have different responsibilities. And I feel like we should experiment with granting the external, like granting governance power in our DAOs to external entities which have aligned incentives. And in that sense, you can think like the validators have skin in the game, right? They have skin in the game, and for me, that makes them primary candidates for being that external governance power that can moderate our DAOs, right? And because at the end of the day, if you are a validator, your interest is like success of the biggest DAOs, so to be secure, right? You secure in the network, you can secure the DAOs. And I wouldn't like just make the external like membership just for the validators, but I can see them as candidates for the pool of like people who can introduce into our governance structures.
And taking this question over to you, Cryptic, you know, with the innovation of super LSTs, the same question. Do you think that it would be interesting to not only give a separate yield option to holders, but also find amongst them, or maybe a quorum of them, to act as a super delegate on other DAOs? Like maybe one day that, you know, they have a veto power within Marinade DAO as a you know, trusted ecosystem actor.
Yeah, well, I think like the aspect of LSTs makes participation in the infrastructure of Solana and like the validators of Solana more accessible to people. And I heard some interesting conversations back when I worked at Marinade where we were talking about maybe the LST could actually be the governance vehicle for a validator or for a stake pool. So I think that's one of the main benefits of LSTs when it comes to DAOs and governance, that you can kind of like make it more accessible for anyone really to participate on the infrastructure level of Solana. And obviously there's tons of examples of that, like Marinade, Michael from Marinade mentioned, where there's already DAOs, so there's like other Chaos, Monkey DAO, etc., that has taken that step and introducing like the deeper side of Solana to a broader public.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up other Chaos, because they're not really well known, and yet they've got something like, what, 10,000 soul staked?
I don't know how much stake they have, but they did a pretty interesting play where they used the NFT as the bootstrapping vehicle for getting that initial like self-stake to the validator. And an interesting aspect, I recall, like they used a strategy where they used the Marinade token to vote for more stake to their validator as well, which is one of the big benefits with the Marinade stake, where now we can also use MSOL, right, as well, to direct stake. So thanks to Marinade and also Solblaze, I think, as well, it's easier for anybody to participate on the infrastructure level and have a validator than ever before. And it's quite different from other layer ones as well.
So I do see how LSTs increase participation. And I want to circle back to this core question of like, would they be part of this new external group we're talking about? Like to zoom out for a second, and I think that, you know, correct me where I'm wrong on this, Sebastian. A lot of these conversations, these thoughts that Anatoly was sharing, were connected to when Parrot had their DAO vote to take out the treasury, where the entire ecosystem knew that this was a bad actor moment, let's say. You know, that could have been an opportunity for everyone with Sol to flag, you know, maybe a super majority, like something like 70% of Sol holders flag, hey, we want to veto this decision. Like that's kind of the idea, is that we collectively can see something, and validators are probably the best watchdogs, because you got to be 24/7, you know, looking at what's going on to operate a validator. And, you know, Neodyme, Robert shared with us like how important it is to be paying attention. That's why validators are really good actors in this to take on that role. So with that context, is there a world where, you know, MSOL holders, marinade holders start to form a layer of acting as kind of like a board for other DAOs?
Yeah, that might be an interesting concept, since as I was saying before, marinades take some part of its TVL through this algorithmic strategy, but part of it, it's up to the people, really, up to the token holders to decide where the stake should go. This works both for the MSOL holders, and MSOL holders are the actual liquidity providers to marinade. So those that would put SOL into marinade and get MSOL back, I mean, it's reasonable for them to decide where the part of the stake goes, because they take the whole risk. They have the SOL in it, and then there are the MND holders. Now we have more than 80,000 MSOL holders being able to direct part of the stake across 30,000 MND holders to be able to do it. So there is this community somehow behind it, trying to understand how they can influence what's the most critical infrastructure of Solana again, and that's the stake. We've been talking that there is the role of the validator, as you've been saying, that, yeah, they need to do their work right, but behind them, there are the delegators that delegated some SOL to them, giving them power to do so. And if the validators, for example, just recently, it's a bit of a sideline, but just recently, a week ago, the biggest validator on Solana, Coinbase, they run 2 validators. They have a sum of 20 million SOL, and for the whole 1 hour, they were offline, right? That's like 1 hour. It cost about 150 SOL in staking rewards for this 1 hour for their delegators to lose because they were not running. And those are the biggest trusted validators. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with Marinade, trying to take the risk of those big ones and trying to educate the people. It's best for everybody to rather spread it around. And yes, in the future, if there might be some communities around it, we've seen it already that Marinade DAO has been dropped some tokens from some other community projects because it's been one of the most decentralized DAO in the ecosystem. So yeah, we might also see it that the Marinade DAO and the community behind it might bootstrap some other ideas in the ecosystem.
Sorry?
I thought you wanted to add something to that.
No, but I think ultimately, one aspect that I think is fun with validators these days that people haven't really looked into that much is that the liquid stake token that we usually associate with a stake pool. Now these days you can do that for a single validator as well. And we have Lane Sol and Cogent Sol, which is 2 great examples of it, which again kind of makes it more accessible for people to participate in that validator and be part of that community. And that also involves more responsibility for the validator operator too, because now they have more people to answer to because it's more accessible. The word of mouth spreads quite quickly. So if you have that community participating in the validator in that sense, it kind of secures the validator, and you have this crowd continuously watching and making sure the validator operator is doing good things as well, and not changing, for example, certain aspects with the validator metrics by the end of epochs to try to game the systems and so on. So it just spreads out the accessibility again to a larger crowd that holds the validator operator more accountable to its actions. So I think in the future we'll see more of that as well, in particular with Sanctum, who's providing this kind of liquidity for all LSTs out there too, which is a genius idea as well. So it's easier for anyone than ever to set up a validator and attach that to a community or to a DAO, for example. So I think, like we mentioned previously, Other Chaos is one of the best examples, I think, of some guys who's like, okay, we want to start a validator, but we cannot really afford that self-stake. That's 5K SOL at least, and they managed to rally a community around it and bootstrap it that way. So again, LSTs and also solutions that Marinade are working with, for example, the Marinade token, where we can direct stake through MSOL or the Marinade token, just brings more of a shared responsibility of operating a validator or a stake pool in that manner.
So I think that there's consensus on this idea of having external participants in DAOs being able to be maybe a backstop when something goes bad. Sebastian, now with like thinking about, I think there's 3 abstractions. Like there's validators, then there's the combined LST version, and then the ones you brought up, which is like the cogent or the lane specific. Which might be best suited to take on that responsibility?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's something I was just thinking about. Like, I kind of think that, yes, we should allow validators to be part of our boards, but the question is which one, what would be the criteria to choose them? Is it like purely on stake, on activity? When you look at the Staking Alliance Discord, they are very active and very passionate community. And I probably could name a few, like, some lane that would be like comfortable giving governance power in my DAO. But I'm not sure about the others. Like, for example, you have those validators that cheat on the score line. Would you trust them? But exactly, right? So it's hard. It's hard. But one way or another, maybe just should be like, some reputation. I think really, like, we know them, right? And I would be comfortable with giving, like, for example, to Marinate a vote in my DAO. I would be comfortable giving to Lane or some Soulblaze or like Jito guys. Yeah, but not sure if to all of them.
And one of the things we haven't covered is, what's in it for the validator? Like, they're already doing something. All of a sudden, we're giving them a new responsibility. Hey, you gotta keep an eye on our proposals. Make sure somebody doesn't try to, steal all our money. Well, what's in it for me?
Well, I think that should be incentivized. I think there's like no doubt. I think like governance is a chore. Nobody wants to do that, right? And this is what we are working with Marinate, or doing this delegated voting, making to do aggregated delegation, and like people can create clubs or clans, and then the leader of the clan can vote for the entire clan, right? And I think that those leaders should be incentivized, right? And the same way, if validator comes on board to a DAO, they should do the job, right? They, like, the risks are real. If you have $1 million treasury, then as Robert was explaining, you can do social attack, or you can do some engineering to steal this money. And that means, to some extent, you can use technology to protect that, but at the end of the day, it's a human who casts the vote. And those humans should know what they're doing. And like most people who vote, they don't know. They just vote like the others, right? So this is like kind of very, very easy, right? And this is why I think like introducing those external knowledgeable entities to governance structure is very important, but they should be paid for that. I mean, that's like no question about it. So for the validator, it can be like another source of income to not only secure the network, but also secure the DAOs.
Well, it led me to think about the story of both Cogent Crypto, that validator, and Lane as well. Because I recall back in the day seeing them grow from like nothing to becoming one of the biggest ones. And that was a lot due to the reputation they built by participating when Solana had like their kind of pauses, let's say, in the network. They were one of these people that were in the forefront in the Solana Discord trying to solve this. And that built like a reputation amongst large Sol stakeholders.
Right.
And that, after that, and they were like leading the charge there of saving Solana, sort of. After that, they got a huge amount of stake. So it would be interesting to see in the future how that reputation aspect can be moved to an on-chain thing, like you kind of alluded to a little bit. I don't have a good solution for that. Sebastian probably have better ideas. But I think what's in it for the validators, it is that reputation in the end, and what kind of good they're doing for the broader ecosystem.
Right, that is a good intangible upside, in that you get more reputation from it.
And that can be also the good for the validators, right? Because they're competing for stake. And making them visible and active in the communities, being like active members of other DAOs, can actually make them more visible. And people will trust them more. Like for now, there's no slashing, right? So there's like no risk with staking in a bad actor. But if that is introduced, there will be like much more risk in staking in a random validator. So I think that that the reputation that the validators can get from being even more active in community can pay off.
So Michael, maybe we've pitched you on this idea now for a validator to have veto power on Marinade DAO. How would you think about choosing which validator group would get that power?
Yeah, so I think there are like two levels. Even now, we might not be talking about future, but even now at the Marinade DAO, there are probably two levels how validators already participate. So one is that internally we have this, we call it like advisory group, advisory board, which is now about 18 members on it, and it's a mix of like DeFi founders, validators, security companies, actually like audit security firms. It's like a mix of people on it that are around Marinade and are around there to help it, and they get to share the upside of the same as a team. So if we get to grow the TVL, we get to unlock tokens together with these advisory forks. So on it, we have 6 seats that are taken by validators already. So as you can see, about 1/3 of our advisory board is actually filled by the validators that we chose as a team. So they are around, they provide feedback, and because, Marinade needs to be working very tightly with the validators. So that's one link. So that's how already those picked ones have some shared upside together with Marinade. So that's one. And then two, it's the MND token, as we were talking about, it allows you to direct where the 20%, which is 2 million SOL stake today, you get to decide with MND token where this goes. And obviously the very first ones to use this benefit were the validators. So we don't have it measured, but if you run a validator, I believe it's even now might be cheaper for you to acquire MND and then direct stake to your own validator than just to buy SOL. So they were the first ones that started to use this, and that's how it formed initially. Down the road, we have some programs that will be announced soon to even increase the weight of the validators to be around the DAO, because we really believe it's a key infrastructure part of the ecosystem, especially of the Marinade DAO. So us being without any VCs, we want, like the DAO wants to get the tokens out there in the right hands, and validators is the segment that should get it and should have a say in the governance of the Marinade DAO for sure.
Would it be possible to put that score that you have for your validators on chain and have it like maintained in decentralized fashion? Because if that was possible, that score you could use to choose the best validators, and then they also you could use to choose for the governance power. So you score them and you incentivize them to be really good validators to get a good score, and that has extra benefits of being able to participate in DAO governance.
Yeah, you mean the scoring system, how we track the performance? Yeah, it's definitely possible. We've been thinking about it for, I would say, like 18 months now, so more than a year we've been thinking about it, that down the road, it's on the roadmap to put like the whole scoring and distribution system on chain. So it's definitely possible. We understand how to do it. It's just now compared to other things, it's not the highest priority as of now, but that might be the long run the play for everybody to see the tracking system living on chain forever and ever. So we know it is possible, it's just not there now. As of now, anybody can fact check that the scoring system that's put out there, and that's how Marinade decides how to delegate. You can cross-check it that it's not false, and everybody can check it by themselves. That's how it is today. It just won't live 100% on chain right now, but in the future, that's the idea.
Yeah, because I think that would be a good measure.
Yep.
Not the amount of stake, but the quality of stake.
Yep.
And then and again extra incentives for validators to be good stake and quality stake. Yeah, that I can see that as a future.
Yeah, and I would say like quite organically, the Marinade score, even if not 100% on chain, like as I was saying, only 2.5% of all SOL is staked through the decentralized way of Marinade. And Marinade stakes based on this score. So this score looks at geographical location and the yield and all those aspects. So actually the score works already. If Marinade would grow, it would just be able to stake more Solana the decentralized way. So actually even now it would work. If Marinade grows, that means that Solana becomes more decentralized and the stake moves from the big guys, because that's what Marinade skips, to the rather long tail of validators that need it, that those are invisible and people don't trust them because you are not going to stake with validator 500 unless you know them. But Marinade understands that they are performant, and that's what matters, so that Marinade would pick those as the guys that should have it. So even now it would work, just in the long run, yeah, the infrastructure can be even improved.
Cool.
Yeah, in this conversation, I realized that maybe LSTs are probably the best equipped in that you already have created these advisory boards. You've already created a group of trusted individuals. You're speaking to people versus, you know, going wide and saying, okay, how am I going to pick from all of these validators? It's really interesting. I want us to continue this conversation, but that's our time. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening to our panel.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.